Welcome, dear viewers. For more exclusive, thrilling stories every week, join our membership. Sit back, relax, and sip your coffee. Enjoy. Let me start by saying I never planned to end up in Hibbing, Minnesota. 6 months ago, I was living in Chicago with a decent apartment and a job at a marketing firm. But then there was the gambling. It started innocently enough: poker nights with friends, the occasional trip to the casino. I convinced myself I had a system. Turns out, the only system I had was one that drained my bank account and knocked out 3 credit cards. My sure-thing horses never crossed the finish line first. My can't-miss poker hands somehow always missed. I still remember my final night at the Horseshoe Casino. I borrowed money from people you shouldn't borrow from, convinced myself that this time would be different. It wasn't. After that night, I couldn't show my face in Chicago anymore. I packed what little I had left into my 2008 Toyota Corolla and drove north. No destination in mind, just somewhere far from my debts and the people I owed. The car broke down just outside Hibbing, and that's where I've been ever since. Hibbing isn't what you'd call a thriving metropolis. It's Bob Dylan's hometown, which the locals never let you forget. And it has the world's largest open-pit iron mine. Beyond that, it's just a quiet town on the Mesabi Iron Range with harsh winters and not much else. I found a room at the Sawmill Inn for a few nights while I looked for work. My funds were dwindling fast, and I needed something, anything, to keep me afloat. That's when I saw the job posting at the Starlite Motel on East 25th Street. Night security guard needed, no experience required, $22 per hour, immediate start. The pay seemed too good for a place like the Starlite. If you've never seen it, picture the kind of motel that time forgot. Single-story, L-shaped building with maybe 20 rooms total. The neon sign missing a few letters, so it just reads SARLIEMOEL at night. The kind of place where the ice machine is perpetually broken and the rooms smell like cigarettes no matter how many no smoking signs they put up. I met with the manager, Darlene Clervisto, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and hands weathered from decades of harsh Minnesota winters. She barely glanced at my hastily fabricated resume before sliding a key card across her cluttered desk. Shift starts at 11 p.m., ends at 7 a.m. You'll be alone except for whoever's at the front desk. That's usually Tommy on weeknights and me on weekends. I was about to thank her when she pulled out a warm manila folder and added, "There are rules you need to follow. Specific rules. Break them, and I can't guarantee your safety." I laughed, thinking it was some kind of joke. Darlene didn't laugh back. "I'm serious, Mr. Reynolds. This isn't your typical security job. The Starlite has peculiarities." She opened the folder and pulled out a single typed page. "Memorize these. Your life depends on it." As I scanned the list, a chill settled over me despite the stuffy office air. 6 rules, each more bizarre than the last. I looked up at Darlene, waiting for the punchline. "Is this some kind of hazing ritual for new employees?" I asked. Darlene's expression remained grave. "I wish it were. You start tonight. Don't be late." I took the job. What choice did I have? And that first night at the Starlite Motel changed everything I thought I knew about reality. Let me tell you what happened. I arrived 15 minutes early for my first shift, parking my Corolla next to a rusty Ford pickup in the otherwise empty lot. The motel sat just off Highway 169, its facade bathed in the sickly yellow glow of sodium lights. Across the road, The Jubilee Foods grocery store had closed for the night, its darkened windows reflecting the Starlite's flickering sign. Tommy, the night clerk, was a lanky kid with acne scars and sleepy eyes. Couldn't have been more than 20. He barely looked up from his phone when I entered the cramped lobby. "You the new guy?" he asked, sliding a walkie-talkie across the counter. "Darlene said you'd be starting tonight." I nodded, pocketing the device. "Any special instructions besides the rules?" Tommy's eyes darted up to meet mine, then quickly back to his phone. "Just follow them, to the letter. Don't think you know better." He showed me to a small office behind the reception desk, a glorified closet with a metal desk, a decades-old computer monitor displaying fuzzy black and white feeds from the motel's security cameras, and a coffee maker with a half-full pot of what looked like liquid tar. "You can hang out here when you're not doing rounds," Tommy said, leaning against the doorframe. "Rounds are at midnight, 2 a.m., 4 a.m., and 6 a.m. Just walk the perimeter, check the vending area, make sure nothing's out of place." "And the rules?" I asked, pulling out the paper Darlene had given me. Tommy shifted uncomfortably. "Yeah, those." He checked his watch. "It's 10:53. You should read them before your shift officially starts." I sat at the desk and unfolded the paper as Tommy retreated to the front counter. The rules were typed in a plain font, nothing fancy, like someone had written them on an old typewriter. Between midnight and 5 a.m., do not respond to any knocking on the motel office door unless preceded by 3 phone calls to the front desk. If room 17 calls the front desk, transfer the call to the manager's line. Do not speak to the caller. There is no room 17. During your 2 a.m. round, you will see a red Chevy Impala in the parking lot. Do not approach it. Do not look directly at the driver. Continue your round as normal. If you see a guest walking their dog after 3 a.m., do not acknowledge them. Return to the office immediately and lock the door until your 4 a.m. round. The Starlite does not allow pets. The ice machine will make a grinding noise at 3:17 a.m. precisely. Unplug it and count to 27 before plugging it back in. This is non-negotiable. If a guest with a Minnesota State Patrol uniform checks in, assign them to room 8, regardless of availability. Call Darlene immediately after they've gone to their room. I read through the list twice, then looked up at the clock on the wall. 11:01 p.m. My shift had officially begun. "This has to be a joke," I muttered. I could hear Tommy at the front desk, tapping away at his phone. I stepped out of the office. "These rules," I began, holding up the paper. "What happens if—" "Don't," Tommy interrupted, suddenly alert. "Don't even ask, just follow them." I was about to press further when the phone rang. Tommy answered with the rehearsed greeting. "Starlite Motel. How can I help you?" His expression changed, fear flashing across his features, before he composed himself. "Yes, sir. Room 8 is available. We'll have it ready for you." He hung up and looked at me with wide eyes. "State troopers coming. Rule 6. "Already?" "It's my first night." Tommy shrugged, his fingers nervously drumming the counter. "Things happen when they happen here." 20 minutes later, a Minnesota State Patrol car pulled into the lot. I watched on the security monitor as a tall figure in uniform stepped out. Even in the grainy footage, something seemed off about his movements. Stiff, mechanical, like he was wearing clothes that didn't quite fit. Tommy checked the officer in without incident, handing him the key to room 8. I noticed he avoided looking directly at the trooper's face. After the officer left, Tommy picked up the phone with shaking hands and dialed a number. "Darlene?" "It's happened again." "Yes, I put him in room 8. A pause. "The new guy's here. Yes, I'll tell him." He hung up and turned to me. Darlene says stay in the office until she gets here. Don't do your midnight round. And whatever you do, don't go near room 8. What's going on? Who is that guy? Tommy's face had gone pale. That's not a state trooper. Then who? It's not a who, Tommy whispered, glancing nervously toward the corridor leading to the rooms. I don't know what it is, but it's been coming here every few months for years. Always asks for a room. Always wears that uniform. A chill crept up my spine as Tommy continued. Darlene knows how to handle it. Just stay put. I retreated to the office, my mind racing. Through the window, I could see room 8's door, firmly closed with the Do Not Disturb sign already hanging from the knob. As I watched, the sign began to swing gently, though there wasn't any breeze. The walkie-talkie on the desk suddenly crackled to life. Reynolds? It was Darlene's voice. Stay where you are. I'm 15 minutes out. Whatever you hear, whatever you see, do not leave that office. What's happening? I asked. Your first lesson, she replied grimly. About why we have the rules. The line went dead, and I was left alone with the soft, rhythmic swing of the Do Not Disturb sign and the growing certainty that I'd made a terrible mistake taking this job. The minutes crawled by like hours. I kept my eyes fixed on the security monitor, watching room 8. Nothing moved except that gently swinging Do Not Disturb sign. Tommy paced behind the front desk, checking his watch every 30 seconds. The old wall clock ticked loudly in the silence, its sound amplified by my frayed nerves. At 11:47 p.m., headlights swept across the parking lot as a battered blue Subaru Outback pulled in. Darlene's car. Tommy visibly relaxed. Thank God, he muttered. I watched on the monitor as Darlene stepped out of her vehicle. She moved with purpose, opening her trunk and removing what looked like a duffel bag. Before heading inside, she paused, staring directly at room 8. Then she looked up at the security camera and gave a curt nod. When she entered the lobby, I barely recognized her. Gone was the unassuming motel manager. This Darlene wore a heavy canvas jacket despite the mild spring night. Her gray hair pulled back tightly, her weathered face set in grim determination. Any activity? She asked, dropping the duffel bag on the counter with a metallic clunk. Tommy shook his head. Just checked in, went to the room. Sign's been moving, though. Darlene nodded like this meant something significant. She unzipped the bag, revealing an assortment of items that made no sense together. A container of salt, what looked like iron railroad spikes, a bottle of clear liquid, bundles of dried herbs, and something wrapped in red cloth. Reynolds, she said without looking up. Come here. I stepped out of the office. What's happening? You're training. She handed me the salt. This is going to sound crazy, but I need you to make a line of this across the front entrance, every window, and the door to the hallway. Don't break the lines. Don't leave gaps. I stared at the container. You can't be serious. Her eyes met mine, hard as Minnesota granite. 6 years ago, a night guard thought I wasn't serious, ignored the rules, thought it was all some backwoods superstition. She rolled up her sleeve, revealing a jagged scar running from wrist to elbow. I found him in the ice machine room. What was left of him? The matter-of-fact way she said it froze the skepticism in my throat. Salt. Lines. Now, she repeated, turning back to her bag. I did as instructed, laying down salt lines while Darlene prepared whatever was in the red cloth. Tommy watched nervously from behind the counter. What's in room 8? I finally asked, finishing the last line. What are we dealing with? Darlene paused her preparations. The Mesabi Range has been mined for over a century, iron ore mostly. But there are older things in these hills than iron. The Ojibwe knew about them, had names for them, ways to keep them at bay. She glanced toward the hallway. The thing in room 8 is what they called a memagwesi, though that's not quite right either. A spirit? I asked, feeling ridiculous even as I said it. No, she replied. More like something wearing a human shape, like putting on a coat that doesn't fit. She returned to her work. They need places to stay sometimes. This motel sits on what used to be a trading post. Before that, something else. And you let it stay here? Darlene's hand stilled. We have an arrangement. It gets room 8 when it needs it. In return, it leaves the guests alone. Mostly. She didn't answer that. Instead, she handed me the now unwrapped bundle, a strange, compact item made of twisted iron with symbols etched into its surface. When I go to room 8, you stay here with Tommy. If you hear me call out, put this under the front desk and both of you get in my car. Keys are in my pocket. She patted her jacket. Drive until you hit Virginia. Don't stop for anything. Virginia was the next town over, about 15 miles north. Tommy looked like he might be sick. Whatever was about to happen, he'd seen it before and wasn't eager for a repeat performance. This is insane, I said, though my voice lacked conviction. Darlene picked up a railroad spike and the bottle of clear liquid. Probably, but so is whatever that thing really looks like under the trooper uniform. She headed toward the hallway, then stopped at the salt line. Remember the rules, Reynolds. All of them. This one's in room 8. But there are others. They're the reason for every single rule on that list. With that, she stepped carefully over the salt line and walked down the hall. The security monitor showed her approaching room 8. She knocked 3 times, then twice more. The door opened, though I couldn't see who or what was inside. Darlene spoke words I couldn't hear, then entered the room. The door closed behind her. Now what? I asked Tommy. Now we wait, he whispered, eyes fixed on the monitor. Minutes passed. The wall clock continued its relentless ticking. On the monitor, room 8 remained closed and silent. At exactly midnight, the phone rang. Tommy jumped, but made no move to answer it. Shouldn't you get that? I asked. Rule 1, he replied. No knocking responses unless preceded by 3 calls. The phone rang 8 times before stopping. 3 minutes later, it rang again. 9 rings, then silence. That's 2, Tommy said. The third call came at 12:08. This time, Tommy counted the rings aloud. 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 10. That's 3 calls. No sooner had the phone stopped than a loud knock echoed through the lobby. 3 sharp raps on the front door. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Through the glass, I could see a figure standing outside. A woman in a tattered sundress, her hair obscuring her face. Jesus Christ, I gasped. Someone's out there. Tommy grabbed my arm as I instinctively moved toward the door. Wait, look at her feet. I did. The woman was barefoot, despite the cool night and rough parking lot gravel. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. Her feet were backwards, toes pointing behind her, heels facing forward. That's not a guest, Tommy whispered. Don't open the door. The woman knocked again, harder this time. The glass rattled in its frame. She tilted her head, hair parting just enough to reveal one eye, yellow, with a vertical pupil like a cat's. Please, came a voice, muffled through the glass. It sounded like several voices layered over each other. My car broke down. I just need to use your phone. I stood frozen, the iron bundle Darlene had given me clutched tightly in my sweating hands. It's trying the rules, Tommy explained quietly. Rule 1, it's hoping we'll break protocol. As if on cue, the woman's neck extended, stretching impossibly as her face pressed against the glass, that yellow eye widening. "I know you're in there," the multi-layered voice said. "I can smell you, James Reynolds." My heart nearly stopped. I'd never told anyone here my first name. I'd been going by my middle name, Alan, since arriving in Hibbing. The creature smiled, revealing teeth too numerous and sharp for any human mouth. "I know all about Chicago," it continued. "About the money you owe. The people looking for you. I can help." The salt line at the door began to smoke faintly, as if the floor beneath it was heating up. "Don't listen," Townie hissed. "It lies. They all lie." The creature's smile faltered as it noticed the salt line. It hissed, a sound like steam escaping a pressure valve. "This doesn't end well for you," it said, voice hardening. "None of them will tell you the truth about this place." Suddenly, the door to room 8 opened on the monitor. Darlene emerged alone, closing the door behind her. She looked exhausted but unharmed. The creature at the front door noticed our attention shift to the monitor. It glanced over its shoulder, then back at us with a snarl. "She can't protect you," it spat. "Not when the real darkness comes." With that final warning, it backed away from the door, its movements jerky and unnatural. It retreated into the shadows of the parking lot until it disappeared completely. Moments later, Darlene returned to the lobby, carefully stepping over the salt line. "I see you've met our other regular visitor," she said grimly, nodding toward the front door. "Apparently tonight's a busy night at the Starlite." "What the hell was that thing?" I demanded once Darlene had locked the front door and checked the salt lines. She sank into the chair behind the reception desk, looking 10 years older than when she'd arrived. "The locals have different names for it. My grandmother called it Mi Squadasiwan, a woman of the woods who lures travelers to their death." "That wasn't a woman," I said, my voice shaking. "No, it wasn't," Darlene agreed. "Whatever they really are, they can take forms that make us vulnerable. That one likes to appear as a woman in distress." She glanced at Tommy. "Coffee, strong, and bring the bottle from my bottom drawer." While Tommy busied himself with the coffee maker, I struggled to process what I'd witnessed. The backwards feet, the stretching neck, the yellow cat-like eye, and most disturbing of all, it knew my real name, knew about Chicago. "What did you do in room 8? I asked, desperate to focus on something else. Darlene rubbed her temples. "Renegotiated our arrangement. The one in the trooper uniform is territorial. It claimed this land long before the motel existed. Every few months it returns to inspect its domain. And you just let it stay? Better than the alternative," she replied cryptically. "We've reached an understanding over the years. It stays in room 8, performs whatever ritual it needs to mark its territory, and leaves by dawn. In exchange, it keeps the others away." "Others? Like that thing at the door?" Tommy returned with 3 mugs of coffee and a bottle of Jameson. Darlene poured a generous splash into each mug before answering. "The thing at the door is just one of them. There are worse ones in these woods." She took a long sip of her spiked coffee. "The Iron Range has always attracted them. Something about the mineral composition. The Ojibwe had protections, rituals, boundaries. When the mining companies came, they broke those boundaries." I stared down at my coffee, watching the steam rise. "And the rules? They're to keep these things out. The rules are for survival," Darlene said flatly. "Each one exists because something happened. Something bad. Rule 1 came after a night guard let in what he thought was a guest. We found him 3 days later in the dumpster behind the Hardys on Highway 169, turned inside out like a glove." I felt my stomach lurch. "Rule 2, she continued, exists because there is no room 17, but something wants us to think there is. It calls sometimes, asking for things. If you speak to it, it remembers your voice. The implications sent a chill through me. And the red Impala? The dog walker? The ice machine? Darlene shook her head. One terrifying revelation at a time, Reynolds. Let's get through tonight first. She checked her watch. 12:47 a.m. You should do your rounds soon. The midnight one is late, but better than skipping it entirely. After what just happened, you want me to walk around outside? The thing at the door is gone for now, and you need to see the property, understand its boundaries. She reached into her duffel bag and pulled out a small leather pouch. Carry this. Iron filings and sweetgrass. Not much, but it helps. I took the pouch reluctantly. What about the state trooper thing? It'll stay in room 8 until dawn. That's our agreement. Darlene stood up with effort. I'll come with you for this first round. Tommy can watch the desk. Outside, the night was cool and clear, stars visible despite the motel's harsh lighting. Darlene led me around the perimeter of the property, pointing out features I hadn't noticed earlier. See those stones at each corner of the lot? She said, indicating large rocks that looked like ordinary landscaping features. Iron ore. Placed there specifically, they mark the boundaries of what the trooper considers its territory. As we walked, she explained more about the motel's history. It had been built in 1962 by her grandfather, Erik Koivisto, a Finnish immigrant who'd worked in the mines before saving enough to open his own business. The land had been cheap, suspiciously so, because locals avoided it. 3 construction workers died building this place, Darlene said matter-of-factly. Freak accidents, they called them. My grandfather knew better. He consulted an Ojibwe elder from the Bois Fort reservation. That's when the first rules were established. We passed the ice machine room, a small outbuilding near the end of the L-shaped motel. Darlene placed her hand on the door but didn't open it. Rule 5. The ice machine at 3:17 a.m. Her expression grew distant. My father ignored that rule once in '87. Machine tore his arm off. Would have taken more if Mom hadn't found him in time. I swallowed hard. What's in there? In the machine? We don't know exactly. Something that shouldn't be here. Something trapped between worlds. The noise it makes at 3:17. That's it trying to break through. Unplugging it disrupts whatever process is happening. And counting to 27. That's how long it takes the gateway to close, she replied, as if this were perfectly logical. Not 26, not 28. Has to be 27. We continued our rounds, passing the darkened windows of occupied rooms. There were only 4 guests tonight, according to Tommy's log. An older couple in room 3, a truck driver in room 5, and a woman with a young daughter in room 12. All normal, verified humans, Darlene assured me. When we reached the end of our circuit, returning to the front office, Darlene paused, her expression serious in the harsh lighting. Reynolds, I need to know if you can handle this job. What you saw tonight, it's not even the worst of it. I thought about my options. Running back to Chicago meant certain death at the hands of my creditors. I had no money, nowhere else to go. And despite my fear, or perhaps because of it, I felt a perverse curiosity about this place and its inhabitants. I can handle it, I said, with more confidence than I felt. Darlene studied my face for a moment, then nodded. Get some rest before your 2 a.m. round. That's when you'll see the Impala. Back inside, Darlene took over the front desk from Tommy, who retreated to the break room for his lunch. I settled into the security office, attempting to calm my racing thoughts. On the monitor, room 8 remained closed and quiet. Whatever was happening inside, It wasn't visible to the cameras. I dozed fitfully until my watch alarm beeped at 1:55 a.m. Time for my second round. As I prepared to head out, Darlene called me over to the front desk. Remember Rule 3, the red Impala. Her voice was low, urgent. Don't approach it. Don't look directly at the driver. What happens if I do? I couldn't help asking. Malcolm Truyer did back in '95. Started sleepwalking after that. Every night, he'd walk toward the mine pit. Wife would find him at the edge, staring down. One night, she didn't wake up in time. Darlene's expression was grim. They never found his body. With those comforting words ringing in my ears, I stepped outside for my 2 a.m. round. The night had grown colder, my breath visible in small clouds. I followed the same route Darlene had shown me, checking each corner of the property. Everything seemed normal until I reached the far end of the parking lot. There it was, exactly as Rule 3 had predicted. A red Chevrolet Impala, probably from the late 70s, idling quietly. Its headlights were off, but a faint red glow emanated from the windows, too dim to illuminate the interior. Following instructions, I avoided looking directly at the driver's side, keeping my gaze fixed slightly to the left of the vehicle as I continued my rounds. But from my peripheral vision, I could see a figure behind the wheel, motionless, watching. As I passed the ice machine building, a sudden movement caught my eye. Something dark and swift, darting between the vending machines and the dumpster. I froze, heart pounding. From the shadows emerged a large, emaciated dog. No, not a dog. Its proportions were wrong, legs too long, snout too short. It moved with a jerking gait, like a puppet controlled by an inexperienced handler. I remembered Rule 4. If you see a guest walking their dog after 3 a.m., do not acknowledge them. But it wasn't 3 a.m. yet, and there was no human with this creature. The thing stopped, lifting its head to scent the air. Then it turned toward me, eyes reflecting the parking lot lights, glowing an unnatural amber. I clutched the pouch Darlene had given me, uncertain whether to run or hold my ground. The creature took a step forward, then another. Behind me, the red Impala's engine revved once, loudly. The knot dog froze, hackles rising. It let out a sound no canine throat could produce, a high, warbling cry that raised goosebumps on my arms. The standoff lasted only seconds before the creature retreated, slinking back into the darkness beyond the property line. I released the breath I'd been holding, legs shaking from adrenaline. When I turned to continue my rounds, the red Impala was gone, vanished without a sound. In its place was a single cigarette butt, still glowing red against the black asphalt. I completed my circuit as quickly as possible and practically ran back to the office. Darlene took one look at my face and poured another shot of Jameson into my abandoned coffee mug. "You saw something else," she stated. Not a question. I nodded, describing the dog-like creature. Darlene's brow furrowed. "That's new, not part of the usual menagerie." "New," I croaked. "They're drawn to change, new people, new energy." She gave me a pointed look. "You, specifically." "Me? Why?" Darlene shrugged. "Could be anything. The desperation that brought you here, the debts you're running from, or maybe just bad luck." She glanced at the clock. 2:47 a.m. "Get ready, the ice machine's next. Rule 5. At 3:10 a.m., Darlene and I stood outside the ice machine room, the small metal key shaking slightly in my hand. "Remember," she said, "unplug it the moment you hear the grinding noise. Count to 27, not 26, not 28, and plug it back in. Don't look inside the machine while it's unplugged." "What happens if I do?" Darlene's expression tightened. "Just don't." She checked her watch. 3:12. I have to check on our guest and roommate. This is your task, Reynolds. You're leaving me alone for this? I couldn't keep the panic from my voice. You need to learn. Her tone softened slightly. The pouch I gave you. Keep it close. Iron repels them. With that less than reassuring advice, she headed back toward the main building, leaving me alone with the humming ice machine. The small room was barely larger than a storage closet, concrete floored with cinder block walls. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling, casting harsh shadows. The ice machine itself was an older model, boxy and industrial, with a cloudy plastic front that obscured the interior mechanism. I checked my watch. 3:15 a.m., 2 minutes to go. The night had grown unnaturally quiet. No distant traffic from Highway 169, no chirping insects, not even the usual hum of the vending machines next door. Just the steady mechanical drone of the ice machine. 3:16 a.m. I positioned myself next to the electrical outlet, ready to pull the plug. My throat felt dry, my palms slick with sweat. 3:17 a.m. exactly. The grinding began, a horrible screeching sound like metal tearing against metal. The machine shuddered violently, ice cubes rattling inside. I yanked the plug from the wall socket. The grinding stopped, but the silence that followed was somehow worse. I began counting aloud. 1, 2, 3. The temperature in the room plummeted. My breath fogged in front of me, though it was a mild spring night. 4, 5, 6. A soft tapping came from inside the unplugged machine, like fingernails against the metal interior. 7, 8, 9. My voice wavered. The tapping became more insistent. The cloudy plastic front of the machine began to fog over, not with condensation, but with something darker, like black ink spreading through water. 10, 11, 12. From within the machine came a whisper so faint I could barely make out the words. James, we know what you did in Chicago. I stumbled over my count, heart racing. 13, 14. The darkness behind the plastic seemed to coalesce into a shape, something with long, thin limbs and too many joints. 15, 16, 17. I forced myself to continue, gripping the pouch of iron filings tightly. The men you owe money to, the voice whispered, clearer now. They're coming for you. I can help you hide. Just look at me. See me. 18, 19, 20. I practically shouted, squeezing my eyes shut. The machine began to rock slightly, the metal exterior creaking. 21, 22, 23. Look at me! The whisper became a shriek, the sound of it cutting through my skull like a blade. 24, 25, 26. My whole body trembled with the effort of keeping my eyes closed. Something scratched against the inside of the machine, a desperate scrabbling sound. 27. I fumbled blindly for the plug, shoving it back into the socket. The machine gave a mechanical whir as the power returned. The temperature in the room instantly normalized, and the oppressive silence lifted. When I finally opened my eyes, the ice machine looked perfectly ordinary. Just a boxy, outdated appliance making ice cubes. My legs nearly gave out from relief. I staggered back against the wall, breathing heavily. The pouch of iron clutched in my white-knuckled grip. After a few moments to compose myself, I stepped outside, locking the ice machine room behind me. The night felt strangely normal again. Crickets chirping, the distant hum of a semi-truck on the highway. As I turned toward the motel office, a movement in the darkened parking lot caught my eye. A figure was walking across the asphalt. A guest, leading what appeared to be a golden retriever on a leash. I froze, remembering Rule 4. If you see a guest walking their dog after 3 a.m., do not acknowledge them. It was 3:23 a.m. The guest, a middle-aged man in a flannel shirt and jeans, nodded pleasantly in my direction. The dog trotted along beside him, perfectly ordinary looking in every way. I kept my gaze averted, remembering Darlene's instructions. The man and dog continued their stroll, passing under one of the parking lot lights. That's when I noticed it. The dog had no shadow. Fighting every instinct to run, I walked at a measured pace back to the motel office, careful not to look back. Once inside, I locked the door behind me, my heart hammering. Darlene looked up from the reception desk. "You saw them." I nodded, unable to speak immediately. "Good job following protocol," she said, sliding a fresh cup of coffee toward me. "That one's been coming around for years. We call him the Walker." "And the dog?" I managed to ask. "There is no dog." Darlene's expression was grim. "What looks like a leash is something else. You don't want to know what's on the other end of it." I collapsed into a chair, my legs finally giving out. "This is insane. How do you live with this, night after night?" "You get used to it," she shrugged. "Or you leave, or you end up like Malcolm Trower." I took a long sip of coffee, trying to calm my nerves. The voice in the ice machine. It knew about Chicago, about the people I owe money to. Darlene nodded, unsurprised. "They read your fears, your secrets. It's how they get to you." "What are they, really?" She considered this for a moment. "My grandmother believed they were spirits of the land, corrupted when the mining companies came. Others say they're something older, entities that have always existed in the spaces between worlds. And the rules keep them at bay." "The rules keep us alive," she corrected. "They're like treaties, boundaries. We acknowledge their existence and their territory. In return, they don't drag us screaming into whatever hellscape they come from." The front desk phone rang suddenly, startling us both. Darlene checked the caller ID and frowned. "Room 17, she said. "Rule 2. If room 17 calls the front desk, transfer the call to the manager's line. Do not speak to the caller. There is no room 17. Darlene calmly transferred the call to another line, then picked up a separate phone on the desk. "Starlite Motel, manager speaking," she said, her voice neutral. I couldn't hear the other end of the conversation, but Darlene's face remained impassive as she listened. After several moments, she responded, "As we've discussed before, that's not possible. The terms are clear." More silence as she listened. "No, the boundaries remain as they are." Her tone hardened. "Need I remind you what happened in 1978 or 1994? Whatever the response was, it seemed to satisfy her. Darlene hung up, exhaling slowly. "What was that about?" I asked. "Negotiation," she replied cryptically. "Room 17 doesn't exist in our reality, but something lives there nonetheless. Sometimes it wants to expand its territory. And you just say no?" I reminded of the consequences of breaking our agreement. She glanced at the wall clock, 3:47 a.m. "You should rest before your 4 a.m. round. That'll be an easier one. The worst is over for tonight." I wasn't sure I believed her, but I was too exhausted to argue. As I settled back into the security office chair, I noticed the monitor showing room 8. The door was still closed, the do not disturb sign hanging motionless now. "What about the state trooper thing?" I asked. "Is it just sitting in there?" Darlene's expression clouded. "Not exactly. It's marking its territory, renewing the boundaries that keep the others at bay." "So it's protecting the motel?" "Not out of kindness," she replied. "This is its domain. Has been for centuries, long before the motel existed. The others are intruders, rivals." I tried to process this. We're caught in the middle of some kind of supernatural turf war. Welcome to the Starlite, Reynolds. Darlene's smile held no humor. If you think this is bad, wait until you see what happens during the full moon. I must have dozed off briefly because Darlene's hand on my shoulder startled me awake. "It's 3:58, she said. "Time for your 4 a.m. round." I blinked groggily, the events of the night swimming through my mind like fragments of a nightmare. Except it wasn't a nightmare. The backwards-footed woman, the red Impala, the voice in the ice machine, the walker and his shadowless dog. All real. "Is there anything specific I should watch for this time?" I asked, standing and stretching my stiff muscles. "Should be quiet," Darlene replied. "Most of the entities retreat as we get closer to dawn. Still, keep the iron pouch with you. And if you see anything unusual, anything not covered by the rules, just come straight back." The pre-dawn air had a sharp chill to it as I stepped outside. The parking lot was silent, empty of phantom vehicles and dog walkers. The sky remained dark, though a faint lightening along the eastern horizon promised eventual sunrise. I followed the now familiar route, checking each corner of the property. At the far end of the motel, I paused, sensing something different. The air felt thinner somehow, as if the boundary between this world and whatever lay beyond had worn thin. A flicker of movement drew my attention to room 8. The curtains shifted slightly, though there was no breeze. I squinted, trying to make out anything through the narrow gap in the fabric. For an instant, just a split second, I glimpsed something that didn't compute. A suggestion of branching antlers, but twisted and wrong, like roots growing upward instead of down. Then the curtain fell back into place. I hurried past, heart thumping. Darlene had warned me not to be curious about the occupant of room 8. As I rounded the corner toward the ice machine building, something crunched under my boot. Looking down, I saw a scattering of small bones. Too small for human, thankfully, but unnervingly fresh. The remnants of some small animal, stripped clean of flesh. I continued my patrol, trying to dismiss the bones as the leavings of a fox or coyote, though I didn't quite believe it. The vending machine area was mercifully normal, if a bit eerie in the pre-dawn gloom. As I approached the dumpsters behind the motel, a faint sound reached my ears, a soft, rhythmic whimpering, like a child crying. I hesitated, remembering Darlene's warning about anything not specifically covered by the rules. But what if it was actually a child? The woman in room 12 had a young daughter. What if the girl had sleepwalked outside? The whimpering grew louder, more distressed. It seemed to be coming from behind the dumpster. "Hello?" I called softly, one hand gripping the iron pouch. "Is someone there?" The crime stopped abruptly. I took a step closer, peering around the edge of the dumpster. In the shadows, I could make out a small figure huddled against the wall, a little girl in pajamas, her face hidden in her arms. "Hey," I said gently. "Are you lost? Are you staying at the motel?" The child raised her head slowly. Her face was tear-streaked, her eyes wide with fear. She looked about 7 or 8, with long dark hair and pale skin. "I can't find my mommy," she whispered. "Can you help me?" Every horror movie I'd ever seen screamed at me to run. But this was a child, a frightened little girl who needed help. I took another cautious step forward. "Sure, I can help you. What's your name? Which room are you staying in?" The girl stood up, sniffling. "Room 12. I'm Lily." That checked out. Tommy's log had mentioned a woman with a young daughter in room 12. My suspicion eased slightly. "Okay, Lily. I'm Owen, the security guard. Let's get you back to your mom. She must be worried sick. I held out my hand, but kept a slight distance, still wary. The girl took a step toward me, then stopped, looking at something over my shoulder. Her expression changed from fear to something else. A small smile played at the corner of her mouth. "He's here," she said, her voice suddenly different. Deeper, with an odd resonance. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I turned slowly. Standing at the edge of the parking lot was the dog-like creature I'd glimpsed earlier. The emaciated, wrong-proportioned thing with amber eyes. It was watching us, completely motionless, except for a slight twitch of its too long snout. When I turned back, Lily was gone. In her place stood something else. It had the approximate shape of a child, but its limbs were too long, its fingers tapering into points. Its face was smooth and featureless, except for a jagged line where a mouth should be. I stumbled backward, fumbling with the iron pouch. The creature lunged forward with shocking speed, its mouth slash opening to reveal rows of needle-like teeth. In my panic, I flung the entire pouch at it. The leather burst open on impact, scattering iron filings and sweet grass. The creature recoiled with a shriek, its body seeming to ripple and distort. I didn't wait to see more. I ran, sprinting back toward the motel office. Behind me, two inhuman voices wailed in frustration. The child thing and the dog creature, their cries harmonizing in a way that made my brain hurt. I burst through the office door, slamming it behind me and leaning against it, gasping for breath. Darlene was on her feet instantly, alarm clear on her face. What happened? Between ragged breaths, I explained about the child, the dog thing, and my lost iron pouch. "Damn it," Darlene muttered. "They're working together now. That's new. New is bad. New means they're adapting, learning." She grabbed her jacket from the back of her chair. "The skinwalkers don't usually hunt in pairs." My blood went cold. Skinwalkers? Like from Native American legends? Similar concept, different origin. Darlene checked the clock, 4:17 a.m. "They're getting bolder, coming this close to dawn." She reached beneath the counter and retrieved an old revolver. "Stay here. I need to reinforce the boundaries." "Wait," I protested. "You're going out there? With just a gun?" Darlene checked the cylinder, her movements practiced and efficient. Iron bullets, salt in the gunpowder, old family recipe. She looked up with a grim smile. "My grandfather didn't just build motels." She headed for the door, then paused. "If I'm not back in 20 minutes, lock yourself in the office and wait for dawn. Once the sun's up, most of them retreat." Most of them. The trooper doesn't follow the same rules, but it should be gone by them too. With that less than comforting thought, she stepped outside, gun at the ready. I watched on the security monitor as Darlene moved through the parking lot, checking each corner of the property. She paused at the spot where I had encountered the child thing, kneeling to examine something on the ground. The minutes crawled by. Tommy had disappeared into the back office to catch some sleep before his shift ended, leaving me alone at the front desk. Every shadow, every creak of the old building set my nerves on edge. At 4:32 a.m., Darlene returned, looking troubled but unharmed. "Found your pouch," she said, placing the now empty leather bag on the counter. "Also found these." She pulled a handful of small objects from her pocket and set them on the desk. Small bones, identical to the ones I'd seen during my rounds, but these were arranged in a pattern. "What is that?" I asked, studying the formation. It looked almost like writing, but in no alphabet I recognized. "A message," Darlene replied, "or a warning. The skinwalkers are marking the property." "What does it say?" "I don't know exactly. My Ojibwe is rusty, and this isn't even proper Ojibwe." She frowned. Something about hunger and change. A knock at the front door made us both jump. Standing outside was a woman in a bathrobe, her expression frantic. According to the clock, it was 4:36 a.m. "A guest," Darlene said, moving to the door. "A real one." She unlocked the door, letting the woman in. It was the guest from room 12, mid-30s, dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, eyes wide with fear. "My daughter's missing," she blurted out. "Lily, she's not in our room. I fell asleep, and when I woke up just now, she was gone. Please, you have to help me." My stomach dropped. If the real Lily was missing, then what had I seen behind the dumpster? Darlene's professional demeanor took over. "Ma'am, try to stay calm. I'm Darlene Clairvisto, the manager. This is Alan Reynolds, our security guard. We'll help you find your daughter." The woman introduced herself as Karen Mitchell from Duluth. They were staying the night on their way to visit family in Grand Rapids. "When did you last see Lily?" Darlene asked, leading Karen to a chair. "We went to bed around 10. I'm a heavy sleeper. I took a sleeping pill. I shouldn't have. Not in a strange place with Lily, but..." She trailed off, guilt clouding her features. "Does Lily sleepwalk?" I asked, dreading where this was going. Karen nodded. "Sometimes, especially in unfamiliar places." Darlene and I exchanged glances. The implication was clear. The real Lily might be wandering the property while something was impersonating her. "I'll search the grounds," I volunteered, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'll come with you," Karen said, standing. Darlene intervened smoothly. "Ms. Mitchell, it might be best if you stay here in case Lily returns on her own. I'll have Tommy check the security cameras while Alan and I search outside." She disappeared into the back office, returning with a half-asleep Tommy and a fresh iron pouch for me. "Eastern side first," she murmured as we stepped outside. "The border's weakest there, if something took her." We didn't finish the thought. The implication hung in the air between us. If a skinwalker had taken the real Lily, we might already be too late. The sky had lightened to a deep blue, the first birds beginning their morning songs. We searched methodically, checking every nook and cranny of the property. "Alan," Darlene called from near the ice machine building. "Over here." I rushed over, fearing the worst. But what Darlene had found wasn't a body. It was a child's footprint in a patch of mud. Tiny, barefoot. Leading away from the motel, toward the tree line that separated the property from an undeveloped wooded lot. She went into the trees, Darlene said grimly. Beyond the iron ore boundary stones, beyond the protection of the motel's strange rules and treaties. "We have to go after her," I said, already moving toward the tree line. Darlene grabbed my arm. "Wait, Dawn's coming, but it's not here yet. Those woods, they don't follow our rules. There's a child out there, and rushing in blindly will get you both killed." Her grip tightened. "Listen to me. The skinwalkers hunt in those woods. They use mimicry to lure their prey. What you saw earlier, the child thing, it probably got her scent, her appearance from observing the real Lily. So, what do we do? Wait while the little girl is in danger." Darlene released my arm and pulled out her revolver. "We go carefully. Stay close to me. Don't believe anything you see or hear unless I confirm it first." As we crossed the boundary into the woods, I could have sworn the air changed, became heavier, charged with something ancient and aware. The trees were ordinary Minnesota birch and pine, but they seemed to loom larger, their shadows deeper than they should be in the pre-dawn light. "Lily!" I called, keeping my voice low but carrying. "Not too loud," Darlene warned. "We're not the only ones listening." The woods swallowed sound in a way that felt deliberate, our footsteps muffled against the pine needle floor. We followed the small footprints as they wound between trees, Darlene taking the lead, her revolver held ready. "Stay close," she whispered. "The boundary between worlds is thin here." I didn't need the warning. Even without Darlene's supernatural expertise, I could sense something was wrong with these woods. The trees stood too still, no wind disturbing their branches despite the open ground around the motel having a definite breeze. And the wildlife, there was none. No squirrels, no birds, not even insects. Just silence. "What did you mean about skinwalkers?" I asked, keeping my voice low. "Are they like the shapeshifters from Navajo legends?" Darlene shook her head. "Similar concept, different origin. The Ojibwe speak of beings that can wear the skins of animals, or people. The miners who came here have their own stories about creatures that ninnet their lost comrades, leading others to their deaths in cave-ins. And that's what took Lily? Or is pretending to be her? Maybe. There are different types of mimics in these woods. The truly dangerous ones aren't just copying appearances, they're stealing memories, personalities." A twig snapped somewhere to our right. We both froze, listening intently. After a few seconds of silence, Darlene gestured for us to continue following the footprints. The trail led deeper into the woods, toward what appeared to be a small clearing up ahead. As we approached, I noticed a dark shape on the ground, a small, crumpled form. "Lily!" I surged forward, but Darlene yanked me back. "Wait!" she hissed. "Check first." She retrieved a small mirror from her pocket and angled it to view the clearing without exposing ourselves. I peered over her shoulder. In the mirror's reflection, the clearing was empty. No crumpled form, no child. "It's a trap," Darlene whispered. "The skinwalkers are getting smarter, using more complex lures." My blood ran cold. If I'd rushed in. A child's voice called out from a different direction. "Mommy, is that you?" It sounded exactly like what a frightened little girl would sound like. My instinct to help warred with what I now knew about this place. "Don't respond," Darlene warned. "They're triangulating our position." She pulled something else from her pocket, a small cloth bag, and opened it carefully. Inside was a fine white powder. "Salt and iron," she explained, "creates a barrier they can't cross easily." She began to sprinkle it in a circle around us, working quickly and methodically. As she completed the circle, the woods seemed to react. The silence deepened, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Then came the sounds, subtle at first, then more distinct. Whispers from every direction, overlapping and contradictory. "Help me. This way. Alan, I'm hurt. Chicago is calling. Your debts are due." I pressed my hands against my ears, but the voices continued, now seeming to come from inside my own head. "They're trying to disorient us," Darlene said, her voice cutting through the whispers. "Stay focused." Through the trees ahead, a light flickered, warm and golden, like a campfire or lantern. Natural human instinct pulled toward it, a beacon in the unsettling darkness. "Another trap?" I asked. Darlene frowned, studying the light. "I don't think so. That's right about where the old trapper's cabin should be." Trapper's cabin? Built in the 1800s. A boundary place, part of both worlds. Safer than the open woods if we can reach it. She broke the salt circle carefully, creating an opening. "Follow exactly in my footsteps. Don't deviate, not even by an inch." We moved toward the light, Darlene placing each step with deliberate precision. The whispers followed us, growing more desperate and enticing. I kept my eyes fixed on Darlene's back, fighting the urge to look around. The light grew brighter as we approached. Through the trees, I could now make out the silhouette of a small log cabin, weathered by time but still standing. A lamp glowed in its single window. We were perhaps 50 yards from the cabin when Darlene suddenly stopped. In front of us stood a small figure, a little girl in pajamas, shivering in the pre-dawn chill. "Willie?" I whispered. The child looked up, tears streaming down her face. "Please help me. I'm lost." Darlene raised her revolver, aiming it at the girl. "That's not Lily." The child's expression didn't change. "Please, I'm so cold. I just want my mommy." "Darlene," I said uncertainly. "What if it's not her?" Darlene repeated firmly. "Look at the ground." I glanced down. The child cast no shadow, despite the light from the cabin creating long shadows from the surrounding trees. "Last chance," Darlene said to the shadowless child. "Move aside or I fire." The girl's face split into a grin that stretched far wider than any human mouth should. "You've gotten smarter, old woman. Not like the others." Its voice had changed, becoming multi-layered and wrong, like several voices speaking at once. The creature's form rippled, skin seeming to flow like wax. Darlene fired. The sound was deafening in the quiet woods. The creature shrieked, a high, piercing sound that made my teeth ache. It fell backward, body contorting unnaturally before dissolving into a puddle of dark liquid that quickly seeped into the ground. "Run!" Darlene commanded, grabbing my arm. "Now!" We sprinted for the cabin. Behind us, the woods erupted with noise, cracking branches, rustling leaves, and those awful, layered voices calling out in anger. Something crashed through the underbrush, pursuing us. The cabin door flew open as we approached. An elderly Native American man stood in the doorway, beckoning urgently. "Hurry, inside," he called. We dashed past him, and he slammed the door shut, dropping a heavy wooden bar into place. Outside, something slammed against the walls, making the entire structure shudder. "Cutting it close, Darlene," the man said, breathing heavily. His face was deeply lined, his long gray hair pulled back in a braid. He wore flannel pajamas and slippers, as if we'd awakened him. "Didn't have much choice, Joe," Darlene replied, checking her revolver and reloading. "We're looking for a missing child. Girl named Lily, about 7 years old, wandered into the woods from the Starlite." Joe shook his head grimly. "Bad night to be wandering these woods. The skinwalkers are restless. The barriers are thinning." He turned to me, eyeing me with curiosity. "You're the new night guard?" I nodded, trying to catch my breath. "Alan Reynolds." "Joseph Drift," he replied. "Caretaker of this place, you might say." The cabin's interior was a single room with a wood stove, a small bed, a table with 2 chairs, and shelves lined with books and jars of strange substances. Symbols were carved into the wooden walls and door frame, similar to those I'd seen on Darlene's iron objects. "Is she here?" Darlene asked. "The girl?" Joe nodded toward a curtained alcove. "Found her about an hour ago, wandering near the creek, scared out of her wits, but unharmed." Relief flooded through me. I moved toward the curtain, but Joe held up a hand to stop me. "She's sleeping now. Best not to wake her until dawn. The woods have a way of lingering in the mind. Dreams are safer once the sun's up." Outside, the noises had subsided, though occasional scratches against the walls reminded us that we weren't alone. "They can't get in?" I asked. "Not this place," Joe said, gesturing to the symbols carved into the walls. "My grandfather built this cabin on an old Ojibwe site. Sacred ground. The symbols maintain the boundary." He moved to the wood stove, putting a kettle on for tea. Despite the bizarre situation, the domestic gesture seemed to normalize things slightly. "What brought you to these parts?" Joe asked me as we waited for the water to boil. Before I could answer, Darlene cut in. He's running from trouble in Chicago, gambling debts. I shot her an annoyed look, but she continued. No point hiding it, Reynolds. The skinwalkers already know. They read your fears, remember? Joe nodded sagely. That's how they get you. They know what you're running from, what you're afraid of. They use it against you. What exactly are these things? I asked. Darlene mentioned skinwalkers, but she said they're not the same as in Navajo legends. Joe poured 3 mugs of tea, the aromatic steam filling the small cabin. Different tribes have different names for similar concepts. The beings in these woods are old, older than human settlement. The Ojibwe called them Memegwesi when they were benign, and worse names when they weren't. When the iron mining began, Darlene added, something changed. The disruption of the land, the breaking of old boundaries. It corrupted some of these entities. Others were simply freed from their containment. And now they hunt people? Joe sipped his tea thoughtfully. Some do. Others merely observe, play tricks. The truly dangerous ones are the skinwalkers and the mind drinkers. They steal forms, memories, life itself. Like the thing that looked like Lily, I said. Yes. It probably watched her through the motel window, learned her appearance, voice, mannerisms. If you'd gotten close enough, it would have fed. I shuddered, remembering how close I'd come to approaching the false Lily behind the dumpster. The dawn's coming, Joe said, glancing toward the window. The darkness outside had lightened to a deep blue. Once the sun's up, we can take the girl back safely. What about the thing in room 8? I asked. The state trooper. Darlene said it claims the motel as its territory. Joe exchanged a significant look with Darlene. The Guardian, he said. It's one of the oldest. Not good, not evil by human standards. Territorial, yes, but it follows certain rules. It keeps the others away from the motel, Darlene explained, in exchange for use of room 8 during its inspections. A devil's bargain, Joe muttered. A necessary one, Darlene countered. Without it, the motel would be overrun. The last manager who tried to renege on the agreement disappeared, along with 3 guests. Outside, the first rays of sunlight broke through the trees. Almost immediately, the oppressive atmosphere lessened, as if whatever had gathered around the cabin was retreating from the light. Joe stood, moving to the curtained alcove. It's safe now. Let's get this child back to her mother. He pulled back the curtain, revealing the small form of Lily Mitchell, curled up on a cot, sleeping peacefully. I felt a wave of relief seeing her chest rise and fall with normal, healthy breaths. How did she get all the way out here? I wondered aloud. Sleepwalking most likely, Joe replied, though sometimes they call to dreamers. Children especially can hear them when adults can't. As the sun rose higher, Joe gathered a few items into a small bag. I'll come with you back to the motel, been meaning to check on that ice machine anyway. You know about the ice machine? I asked, surprised. Joe smiled grimly. I helped Darlene's grandfather contain what's in it. Time for some maintenance, I think. As we prepared to leave, Darlene gently woke Lily. The girl blinked sleepily, momentarily confused by her surroundings. Where's my mommy? She asked, voice small and frightened. She's waiting for you at the motel, Darlene assured her. We're going to take you back to her now. Lily nodded, rubbing her eyes. I had scary dreams about the woods and the dog with no face. Joe, Darlene, and I exchanged concerned glances. Just dreams, Joe told her soothingly. The sunrise chases bad dreams away. As we stepped outside the cabin, the woods seemed transformed by daylight. Just ordinary Minnesota forest. Birds singing in the branches, squirrels darting between trees. But I knew better now. I knew what prowled here in the darkness. And as we made our way back toward the Starlite, I wondered what other horrors the night shift might bring. The walk back through the woods felt shorter in daylight. Lily rode on Joe's shoulders, her small hands gripping his gray braid for balance. She seemed remarkably calm for a child who had wandered into supernatural woods, but kids are resilient like that. Or maybe she thought it had all been a dream. As we approached the edge of the motel property, I saw Tommy pacing anxiously by the boundary stones. When he spotted us, relief washed over his face. "Thank God," he called out, jogging over to meet us. "Ms. Mitchell is about to call the police." "We found her in the woods," Darlene explained as we crossed back onto motel grounds. "She's fine, just tired." Tommy nodded, glancing warily at Joe. "The guy in room 8 checked out about 20 minutes ago. Left the key in the drop box." "Did you see him leave?" Darlene asked sharply. Tommy shook his head. "No, just found the key in the box during my rounds. Room's empty." Darlene visibly relaxed. "Good. That's one less complication." Karen Mitchell burst from the motel office as we approached, her face tear-streaked but lighting up at the sight of her daughter. "Lily!" she cried, running toward us. Joe carefully lowered the girl from his shoulders. Lily ran to her mother's outstretched arms. "Mommy, I had an adventure in the woods. Mr. Joe made me tea and told me stories about the old days." Karen embraced her daughter tightly, then looked up at us with grateful tears. "I don't know how to thank you. When I woke up and she was gone." "She was just sleepwalking," Darlene said smoothly. "Fortunately, Mr. Drift here lives nearby and found her wandering. He called the motel, and Mr. Reynolds and I went to pick her up." The lie came easily to Darlene, and I understood why. How could we explain the truth? That supernatural creatures had tried to lure her daughter away. That we'd narrowly saved her from being consumed by a skinwalker. Karen didn't question the story. She was simply grateful to have Lily back safely. "We've got a room ready for you and a late checkout," Tommy added. "On the house, and breakfast vouchers for the Bridgmans next door." While Karen took Lily back to their room, the rest of us gathered in the motel office. The adrenaline that had kept me going was wearing off, leaving behind bone-deep exhaustion. "So that's it?" I asked. "Crisis averted. Business as usual." Joe gave a dry chuckle. "Until the next time." Darlene checked her watch. 6:42 a.m. "Your shift's almost over, Reynolds. You should get some rest." "After what just happened? How am I supposed to sleep?" "Exhaustion will win eventually," Joe said. "Trust me, I've been dealing with these woods for 40 years. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, a pendant on a leather cord. It was made of iron, shaped into an intricate knot pattern with symbols etched into its surface. "For protection," he said, handing it to me. "Wear it when you sleep. Keeps the dreams at bay." I accepted it gratefully, slipping the cord over my neck. The iron felt cool against my skin. "I need to check the ice machine," Joe continued, turning to Darlene. "The binding's weakening. That's why it was so vocal last night." "I'll come with you," she replied, gathering her duffel bag. They headed out, leaving me alone with Tommy at the front desk. "So," I said after an awkward silence, "how long have you worked here?" "About 8 months," he answered, straightening brochures that didn't need straightening. "Came for college at Hibben Community. Needed a night job that let me study." "And all this supernatural stuff doesn't bother you?" Tommy shrugged. "It did at first. But the rules work if you follow them, and the pay's better than Walmart. Even in the dream, I felt paralyzed, unable to move or speak. The others sense it too," the trooper continued. "They hunger for it, for you. It leaned closer, and though its face remained in shadow, I sensed something alien studying me. I have marked this territory as mine, the motel, the staff, and now you. A hand reached out, too long, too jointed, and pressed against my chest where Joe's pendant lay. You bear the old one's symbol, wise, but insufficient. The pressure increased, a burning sensation spreading from the pendant. The rules protect you only within my domain. Remember that, debt carrier. The figure straightened, adjusting its uniform with movements that seemed rehearsed, mechanical. We will speak again, when the moon is full. I awoke with a gasp, sitting bolt upright in bed. The room was dark, the blackout curtains doing their job too well. For a disorienting moment, I couldn't tell if it was still daytime, or if I'd slept through to evening. My watch read 5:37 p.m. I'd slept for about 10 hours, though it felt like minutes. The pendant against my chest was warm to the touch, as if it had absorbed heat from my body, or from something else. I remembered the pressure in my dream, the burning sensation where the trooper had touched it. Just a dream, I told myself. A nightmare brought on by stress and the bizarre events at the Starlite. But as I rose to prepare for my second night shift, I couldn't shake the feeling that it had been more than a dream. That somehow, the Guardian had reached beyond the motel's boundaries to deliver a message, or a warning. I showered again, hoping to clear my head, then checked my phone. The text about Chicago remained, along with 3 missed calls from the same unknown number. I deleted them all without listening to the voicemails. Whatever trouble was coming from Chicago, it couldn't be worse than what I'd already faced at the Starlite. At least, that's what I told myself as I drove back to the motel for my second night shift. The sun was setting as I pulled into the parking lot, painting the weathered building in shades of gold and crimson. It looked almost picturesque, just a rundown roadside motel catching the last rays of daylight. But I knew better now. I knew what lurked in the shadows, what watched from the woods, what waited for night to fall. Tommy greeted me at the front desk with a nervous smile. "Night 2, he said. "Ready?" No, I wasn't ready, but I nodded anyway. What choice did I have? As Tommy briefed me on the evening's guests, just 2 occupied rooms tonight, I glanced at the rules posted beside the security monitor. They seemed so inadequate now, mere words on paper against the horrors I'd witnessed. But they were all I had. That, and the iron pendant against my chest, and the growing certainty that I'd stepped into something far larger and more dangerous than a simple night job at a backwoods motel. By the way, Tommy added as he prepared to leave, Darlene said to tell you there's a new rule. Just for tonight. My stomach tightened. What is it? If you see your own reflection moving independently in any surface, go immediately to room 8 and knock 3 times. Wait for a response before entering. I stared at him. What does that mean? What's in room 8? I thought the trooper checked out. Tommy shrugged, already heading for the door. Darlene just said to tell you, good luck tonight. And with that, I was alone, waiting for the night to bring whatever horrors the Starlite Motel had in store for me next. It's been 3 weeks since my first night at the Starlite Motel. 21 nights of following the rules, of encounters with things that shouldn't exist, of learning the boundaries between our world and whatever lies beyond it. I've seen the red Impala 14 times now. I've unplugged the ice machine at 3:17 a.m. every night, counting carefully to 27. I've ignored the knocking at the door unless preceded by 3 phone calls. I've transferred calls from non-existent room 17 to Darlene's line, and I've survived. The rules work, just as Tommy said, as long as you follow them. I've learned more about the Starlite and its history from Darlene and Joe. The motel sits on what the Ojibwe considered a thin place, a spot where the veil between worlds wears thin. The iron ore in the region both attracts the entities and helps contain them, a natural paradox that Joe's people understood long before European miners arrived. The Guardian, the thing that wears a state trooper's uniform, has appeared twice more. Each time it checks into room 8, performs whatever ritual marks its territory, and leaves by dawn. Darlene says it's been doing this since her grandfather built the motel in 1962. Before that, it claimed an old trading post on the same site. Before that, well, no one knows how far back its claim goes. I've stopped questioning the strange reality of my new life. When faced with the impossible, you either break or adapt. I've chosen to adapt. Tonight, though, feels different. The air is charged with anticipation. It's the full moon, the first since I started working here. Joe's warnings about this night have been vague but ominous. Darlene added 3 temporary rules to the list, each more bizarre than our standard protocol. I wear Joe's iron pendant constantly now. I've lined my apartment doorway with salt. I've learned to recognize the subtle signs of skinwalkers, the slightly wrong proportions, the missing shadows, the too perfect mimicry. As for Chicago, my past hasn't caught up with me yet, though the texts keep coming. "We know where you are," the latest one read. "I'm less frightened of human debt collectors now. After facing what lurks in the woods beyond the Starlite, loan sharks seem almost quaint. The sky darkens outside as I prepare for my shift. The full moon rises, huge and yellow on the horizon, casting long shadows across the parking lot. My phone buzzes with a text from Darlene. "Be careful tonight. The moon brings change. The Guardian will be watching." I send back a quick acknowledgement and grab my keys. As I leave my apartment, I catch a glimpse of my reflection in the hallway mirror. For a split second, just the briefest moment, my reflection smiles at me while my own face remains neutral. I freeze, remembering Tommy's parting words from that second night. "If you see your own reflection moving independently in any surface, go immediately to room 8 and knock 3 times. I never had to follow that rule. Until now. My reflection returns to normal, mirroring my shocked expression faithfully, but I know what I saw. Something is different tonight. Something is changing. As I drive toward the Starlite, the full moon seems to follow me, impossibly large in my rearview mirror. The rules will be different tonight. The game is changing. But I'll adapt. I'll survive. I'll follow the rules. Because at the Starlite Motel in Hibbing, Minnesota, the rules are all that stand between us and the things that wait in the darkness. And the darkness is rising with the full moon tonight.